In this podcast episode, the hosts engage in a discussion with Cenk Uygur, the founder of the Young Turks. The conversation delves into the current state of the Democratic Party, the implications of populism, and the challenges facing the left in America. Uygur argues that the Democratic Party is in dire need of a civil war, not in a violent sense, but politically and rhetorically, to reclaim its identity and purpose. Cenk Uygur asserts that the Democratic Party must undergo a significant internal struggle to redefine its values and priorities. He emphasizes that this civil war should be fought politically and rhetorically rather than through violence. Uygur believes that the party has strayed too far from its roots, becoming overly reliant on corporate donations and establishment politics. He argues that this reliance has alienated the very voters the party seeks to represent, leading to a disconnect between the party's leadership and its base. Uygur points out that the blame for electoral losses should not fall on the voters, but rather on the party's leadership. He criticizes the Democratic establishment for failing to recognize the populist sentiments that have emerged in recent years. Instead of addressing the concerns of ordinary Americans, the party has continued to cater to corporate interests, which Uygur believes is a recipe for disaster. He calls for a reawakening of the party's commitment to the working class and a rejection of the elitism that has come to define its leadership. The conversation shifts to the contentious use of the term fascist in American politics, particularly in relation to Donald Trump. Uygur argues that while the term is loaded, it is also accurate in describing Trump's actions and rhetoric. He cites Trump's refusal to accept the results of the 2020 election and his attempts to undermine democratic institutions as evidence of fascist tendencies. Uygur expresses concern that Trump's behavior could set a dangerous precedent for future leaders, potentially leading to a disregard for democratic norms. Uygur elaborates on specific instances that he believes warrant the fascist label, such as Trump's call to terminate the Constitution and his flirtation with martial law. He argues that these actions demonstrate a willingness to prioritize personal power over democratic principles. Uygur warns that if Trump were to regain the presidency, there is a real possibility that he would not relinquish power, which he views as a significant threat to American democracy. As the discussion progresses, Uygur analyzes the reasons behind the Democratic Party's recent electoral failures. He argues that the party's establishment has consistently underestimated the appeal of populism, both on the left and the right. Uygur believes that the Democrats have failed to connect with voters by presenting themselves as the party of the elite, rather than the party of the people. He points to the success of populist figures like Trump as evidence that voters are hungry for leaders who speak to their concerns and frustrations. Uygur criticizes the Democratic establishment for its reliance on corporate endorsements and donations, which he argues alienates the party from its base. He contends that the party's leadership has become disconnected from the realities faced by ordinary Americans, leading to a lack of trust and enthusiasm among voters. Uygur calls for a shift in strategy, urging the party to embrace a more populist approach that prioritizes the needs of working-class Americans over corporate interests. The conversation then turns to the broader implications of populism in American politics. Uygur argues that populism is not inherently left or right. Rather, it is a response to the failures of the political establishment. He believes that both parties have become increasingly disconnected from the needs of their constituents, leading to a rise in populist sentiment across the political spectrum. Uygur emphasizes that the left must reclaim populism as a means of connecting with voters and addressing their concerns. Uygur also highlights the importance of authenticity in political messaging. He argues that voters are more likely to support candidates who are genuine and transparent about their beliefs and values. Uygur believes that the Democratic Party must embrace a populist message that resonates with the experiences of everyday Americans, rather than relying on corporate-backed narratives that fail to address the root causes of discontent. A significant portion of the discussion focuses on the influence of corporate money in politics. Uygur argues that the Democratic Party's reliance on corporate donations has compromised its ability to represent the interests of the working class. He contends that this reliance has led to a culture of corruption within the party, where elected officials prioritize the needs of their donors over their constituents. Uygur calls for a fundamental shift in how political campaigns are funded, advocating for a system that prioritizes grassroots support over corporate contributions. Uygur also points to the dangers of corporate influence in shaping policy decisions. He argues that when politicians are beholden to corporate interests, they are less likely to advocate for policies that benefit the average American. Uygur believes that the Democratic Party must break free from the grip of corporate donors in order to regain the trust of voters and effectively address the challenges facing the country. Throughout the conversation, Uygur emphasizes the need for accountability within the Democratic Party. He argues that party leaders must take responsibility for their failures and acknowledge the disconnect between their actions and the needs of their constituents. Uygur believes that without accountability, the party will continue to struggle to connect with voters and will remain vulnerable to populist challenges from the right. Uygur also calls for a more robust system of checks and balances within the party. He argues that progressive voices must be empowered to challenge the establishment and hold leaders accountable for their decisions. Uygur believes that fostering a culture of accountability will help the party regain its footing and better serve the interests of the American people. The discussion also touches on the role of media in shaping public perceptions of political issues. Uygur argues that mainstream media often perpetuates narratives that favor the establishment while marginalizing progressive voices. He believes that this bias contributes to the disconnect between the party and its base, as voters are often presented with a narrow view of political issues. Uygur emphasizes the importance of alternative media in providing a platform for diverse perspectives. He argues that online media has the potential to challenge the dominance of mainstream narratives and amplify the voices of those who are often overlooked. Uygur believes that by harnessing the power of alternative media, the left can better connect with voters and advocate for policies that reflect their needs and values. As the conversation draws to a close, Uygur reflects on the future of the Democratic Party. He expresses cautious optimism, believing that there is still an opportunity for the party to reclaim its identity and purpose. Uygur argues that by embracing a populist message and prioritizing the needs of working-class Americans, the party can rebuild trust and enthusiasm among its base. Uygur acknowledges that the road ahead will be challenging, but he believes that the party has the potential to evolve and adapt to the changing political landscape. He calls for a renewed commitment to progressive values and a rejection of the corporate influence that has plagued the party for too long. Uygur believes that by fostering a culture of accountability and embracing a populist message, the Democratic Party can regain its relevance and effectively address the challenges facing the country. The conversation also addresses the contentious issue of wokeness and its impact on the Democratic Party. Uygur argues that while some aspects of the woke movement are positive, others have become divisive and counterproductive. He believes that the party must find a way to balance the need for social justice with the realities of electoral politics. Uygur emphasizes that the party cannot afford to alienate moderate voters by embracing extreme positions that do not resonate with the broader electorate. Uygur calls for a more nuanced approach to social issues, one that acknowledges the importance of inclusivity while also recognizing the need for pragmatism. He believes that the party must engage in honest conversations about contentious issues rather than resorting to dogma or ideological purity. Uygur argues that by fostering open dialogue and embracing a more inclusive approach, the Democratic Party can better connect with voters and build a coalition that reflects the diversity of the American electorate.